Do me a favor, Matty. Just as I cut you off here for a second.
Yeah.
Do me a favor.
Cut me off. Yeah.
Just for a second. Ask me straight up if I care that Toronto might have been outplayed in this series. Please just ask me the question.
Oh, hey, Matt. Are you worried that the Leafs were outplayed?
I don't give a fuck, Matty.
Sky is falling radio, man.
This is Tall Can Audio.
Welcome inside an all-new episode of the Tall Can Audio podcast, coming to you from our studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada. Although I guess Ian Mendez is not letting us get away with calling it that anymore. Matt Robinson here, Rob Christie alongside. What's happening today, man?
Is it not beautiful? Is it?
He says this would not have technically been considered Bytown, which is factually correct.
Oh, here in Nepean?
In Nepean, yeah. It's a bit of a stickler.
I know sticklers.
Yeah.
I know sticklers. I don't care.
What's happening, man?
It's Bytown.
How's your Sunday afternoon? How's the weekend treating you?
It's pretty shitty, Matt, to be honest with you. It feels a lot like, and I've said this elsewhere, but I'm going to say it again here for the first time.
Okay. Feels like the first.
You know what? When you have that Christmas, and everyone loves Christmas, and the playoffs for hockey are a lot like Christmas.
That's true.
This one feels a lot like that Christmas where you get a fucking sweater and socks, and you're like, man, I'm super disappointed.
At what age did it become for you where it started to be pretty exciting to get socks? Like, pretty down to get some socks at Christmas. I'm in, man.
When it became super disappointing is when the Leafs started winning playoff rounds. That's when it became super disappointing.
Started winning rounds. Let's pump the brakes. They're just churning out victories left and right here.
Oh, okay, singular. It's all good, man. It's all good. The weather is spring-ish, right? It's been kind of shitty this weekend in terms of rain.
That's true, yeah.
But you know what? We can't always have 30-degree days in April, so...
Frankly, I was displeased with that.
Man,
much.
I was sweeping out the garage and that 31-degree day, and I was like, fuck, I'm going inside. It's just too hot.
Yeah, like your body needs to
acclimatize.
Like warm up as the temperature warms up. No, it was just, fuck you, here's 30 degrees.
Bam!
Yeah.
In your face.
We are on Twitter and Instagram at Tall Can Audio. Give us a follow there, and make sure you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you're hearing us right now. Rob has kindly provided at least the opening pint here for today's episode. What did you bring us, man?
That sounds like a complaint.
Well, I'd gotten kind of used to you supplying
at least the opening pint. All my other guests. I'm not a guest.
No.
That's how it works.
That explains a lot.
Yes.
You view my home.
Do you know the difference between curtains and toilet paper? Well, then you can't come to my house. Today we have a little something special. And I sort of earmarked it not knowing whether today would be a celebration for you or a celebration for me. Turns out, celebration for Matt.
Yeah.
Tonight, this afternoon, this morning, whatever time you are taking this in, this is Origins of Darkness.
So it certainly would have fit in had Game 6 not gone the way that it did.
Right.
Although it would have hardly been the origin.
No.
Just a continuation
origin
of
story.
Darkness.
Everybody loves an origin story these days. So this is an Imperial Stout from Collective Arts. Comes in at a very beefy 10.8%.
Haven't even taken a sip yet. It smells boozy.
Like, for sure it does. I poured mine into a glass.
Yeah.
You, I am sure, did not.
I did not, no. I'm wilding out over here, man.
Well, that's it. It has that sort of, how do I say this in a way that sounds appetizing? But you know how a lot of the Imperials have that sort of thick sort of...
Licoricey.
Yeah, and a little bit, it looks a little viscous.
Okay.
That's kind of what I got here. I've just poured it into a glass.
That was your attempt to make it sound appetizing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like there's an oil spill or a gas leak on the top somewhere. Right? But yummy. But Collective Arts, to me, they do really good stuff, right? So I'm putting my hand and faith firmly in their hands. Man,
we're off to a good start.
I'm struggling here this morning. This afternoon. Whatever the fuck this is. Yeah, have you had a pull in that first? 'Cause
Yeah.
I am getting licorice.
That was that and booze is what's coming off this.
Boozy licorice.
It's like Sambuca.
I love it. Where's the lighter? Let's light this baby on fire right in studio. That would make for good listening.
Sure. It's been a few weeks since you were in, and longer, or actually not as long as the listener thinks it is. You were here for one that never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
As the backup recorder and main computer.
Yeah. Wow.
At the same day went. It didn't go so good, and so you sat here. I would imagine fairly impatiently while I triple checked just about everything here before we started this one.
Because apparently the double check did not have the backup on.
No, it didn't. So check your work, man.
Yep.
Measure twice, cut once.
Well, and the peek behind the curtains.
Don't measure twice. It's always disappointing.
Yeah.
It's never getting any longer.
If you don't like the first measurement, just double it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it goes. Yeah, that was a boffo show too. We covered a pile of
maybe
stuff.
our best ever.
I don't know what our best ever. But we covered a pile of stuff,
Yep.
and so it's too bad.
Yep.
Can't remember what we took down beer wise, but
No.
yeah. So you're right. And then you were out of town,
Yep.
filling in with all of your.
Yeah, we had Shrides in here for one of the Monday shows. Bunda took down a Monday show, and people who I don't know, jumped in remotely. I didn't know how I was going to. Rob's not a huge fan of doing the tech side of this remotely, so Rob brings his best stuff in person, so we let him do that, right? Save the fastball for.
Yeah, well, anybody can hit a BP fastball, right? Bring the good shit. Yeah. So yeah, it has been a while. But similar to last year, if I recall. I don't know if I missed the first 2.5 rounds of the playoffs, just between things I had going.
Yeah, you were traveling a bit in the spring, and then I disappeared a bit. Yeah.
So it just seemed like we were on course for that again, but we've made it back in before the end of the first round.
Right. For some teams, before the end of the first round. Some teams have successfully.
Have they started the second round yet?
The first round. No, they have not.
Then it's still first round.
Okay. We will get to the Leafs a little later. Because
are they still playing hockey?
6 of the last 7
crazy sons of bitches.
Episodes. It's crazy. It was kind of fun, man. We should do this more often. Like I didn't know that's what it felt
For who?
like. Right.
What do you mean it's fun?
But plenty going on around the hockey world. Let's start outside the playoffs. I'm interested in the idea that the NHL, in their continued attempts to grow the game internationally, are going to Sweden, this time sending 4 teams instead of the 2 that they... Now, sometimes they'll send 4 teams overseas, but never to the same city. This time they're sending Minnesota, Detroit, Toronto, and Ottawa. The first thing I noticed was each of those teams is playing 2 games there. Toronto is not playing Ottawa.
Right.
We'll protect our pocketbook a little bit, right? People will buy that back here. We're not giving that away in Sweden. But, an interesting 4 teams to select. Minnesota sort of stands out. You're sending 3 teams from one division and then one that nobody really cares about.
Yeah.
I guess Jonas
Why wouldn't you
Brodin's
say
family
Buffalo?
will be there, I guess. Yeah, Buffalo would have been great. That's a good point, man. It's interesting to me that they've decided this will be 4 games that end up getting played over there?
Well, 2 for Ottawa, 2 for all of them, so 8 games.
8 games, I guess, yeah.
Wait, that doesn't work. That math is not working because 2 teams are in each one of those games. So
yeah, and they're not all playing each other. Like, Toronto's going to play Minnesota and Detroit, as is Ottawa.
6 games, 4 games, 6 games. I don't know, man.
Do you think this does more for hockey? Like, Sweden already likes
They love
its
hockey.
And sending 4 teams over there as opposed to 2, this was weird to me a little bit, man. Like, you could have also gone 2 to Stockholm, 2 to Helsinki.
How about to Munich?
Sure.
Right? Send Edmonton and Ottawa and whatever else. If you want to spread.
Interesting 2 teams you chose.
Yes. But you have sent...
Draisaitl versus Stützle.
Yeah, but just in terms of... Can you Paterka? There's it again. We'll throw another Buffalo
Paterka
reference in there if you want. They're everywhere. They're
Marco
Mr. International.
Sturm still kicking around.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say Joachim Hash.
Yeah, Christian Ehrhoff.
Yeah, like where are we going here?
Marcel Gottsch.
And I'm trying to think of the big German defenseman that played here that sometimes Schubert.
Christoph
Schubert.
Bring Oli Kolzig out of the...
Yeah. It was South African born.
I know, but somehow playing for...
Yeah, it's whatever.
Does this do anything for, like, Ottawa's done this. Toronto doesn't do this because Toronto makes money at home. And I'm not saying other teams don't, but you leave the golden goose at home to keep raking in its millions of dollars on every home date. You don't send them overseas because you don't really charge the same prices over, like, somebody had to pay for this, right? As did every team, got paid for giving up a home date. Toronto's not one that normally goes.
Well, and again, I'm with you 100%. When you look at the top 5/6 hockey nations, right? U.S., Canada, Finland, Sweden, Russia, and then Czech Republic. I don't know, wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah.
If you want to grow the game, go back. Now they just were in Switzerland this year. I think the Preds and the Sharks were there.
That's right. Yeah.
Go to a place like Germany, Schubert, Stutzla, and Dreisaitel aside, right? That is a large.
But those are the teams you'd send. Like, send your 2 biggest German stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, you want to grow it in another market which has a large population and has
money.
Exactly.
Has money.
The economy over there is what it is, and it's got a hard driving economic engine. So why you've missed out on the opportunity instead of going back to something you've done on multiple occasions. Ottawa's been there twice already.
Yeah.
Why would you not go to?
And they didn't love it the last time.
Well, they haven't loved it either time they've went over.
Universally recognized as the unraveling of the post-2017 Sens was that trip to...
Yeah, but they were there in 2008 as well, and it turned for shit like the Paddock team.
Cool, can't wait.
Hey, the Paddock team that started out with almost a NHL record start, like 16-2, and then by the All-Star game, Paddock was coaching in the All-Star game and was fired. I think that's the beginning of either the Craig Hartsburg or the Corey Clouston years.
Either way.
Right, yeah, for sure. And just all of them unraveling after these trips to Sweden. And we all know the past 2 or 3 Novembers have been awesome for Ottawa. So how about we go over this year, 6 time zones, and we trot that bad boy out and see how it goes.
Colorado, by all accounts, they didn't outwardly complain, but Friedman reported earlier in the year, a couple of different places in the podcast and in his 32 Thoughts blog, that they reported back to the league, like, Colorado kind of struggled this year, right? They didn't look like they had for the last couple of years. And they had said to the league, like, this was really hard on our guys. And I can't remember if they were one of the teams, maybe not Switzerland, but there was a couple, like, remember those games in Czech Republic this year as well.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember Dominic Hasek was coming out saying, don't bring your Russians here. Like,
yeah, sorry, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying I don't remember that.
I don't remember which city Colorado went to, but apparently, like, they quietly said to the league, you need to take note of, either how long of a break you're giving people, how many time zones you're asking them to hop. Like, this hurt us. And they made it in anyway, and they're life and death to survive against Seattle. I guess we can talk about that in a bit, but it is interesting. Like, maybe you're better off doing this a week before the regular season starts. Like, we've seen that where you open the season over there and then have a good long break as opposed to doing it mid-season. Would that change it at all for you?
It would. I'm still not loving it.
Yeah.
But it is the preferred to start over there. And so, you start camp a little earlier.
Yeah.
You head over and then you come back and you work your way in, as opposed to heading over after you've already played 15 games and you've got into the rhythm, and then now I heard good friends of the show, AJ Jakubek and Lieber Sage, both were discussing. They're like, overblown. They're like, you fly 5 hours to Los Angeles.
To LA,
yeah, that's 3 hours. That's a 3-hour time change.
Yep.
Right. You are flying more than 5 hours to get
to 6 or 7 hour time change.
It's a 6-hour time change. Yeah. So you're doubling the time change. And while you're not doubling the flying time, you certainly are extending it.
Right.
And so to me, I found it a bit flippant to just go, 5 hours to LA, 6-hour time change to Stockholm. It's good. And you're like, you're doubling the time change.
Yeah.
And you are talking about a sort of a day per hour time change is what they suggest is ideal to harmonize your body with.
And, like, this is why I give Colorado the benefit of the doubt here. They didn't do this in the media, right? Like, they quietly said, this is hard. And so they did, like, maybe it was an excuse. Like, maybe they just weren't playing well. They did have a bunch of injuries this year. But maybe it's worth hearing them out when a team comes back, doesn't make a big show of it, but says, yo, this was... And they're 2 hours further, right? Like out in the mountain time zone as well. So, I don't know.
It'd be an 8-hour time change.
So Toronto, Detroit, Minnesota, and
also
Ottawa.
in the Central.
Going. Yeah. It's interesting to me that, like I said, it's an odd group of teams to send. Maybe you just pick another Atlantic Division team. But I don't know. Like, to me, this does nothing for me as a fan. Like, I'll watch the games. I always watch the games. But there's nothing exciting to me. But it's not for me, right?
Who are the biggest Swedish stars in the league, would you say, right now?
Yeah, Dahlin, you made a good point. Hedman.
Yep. But two good ones right there.
Carlson had a 100-point year.
Well, that's good, yeah.
Yeah.
But
in terms of biggest stars.
Yeah, and that's what, and again, so it's not about Markstrom, like, just in terms of, you have Gustafsson, who had a great year once he left Ottawa.
Landeskog.
Yeah, a little long in the tooth.
Yeah. As is Carlson, but big names.
Yep, for sure. But I'm just saying, it seems to be like we're at a bit of a lull. I think Raymond in Detroit is a star on the come.
Yep.
Elias Pettersson maybe is another guy who I would look at. But yeah, I think you've touched on it, right? That I'm not sure that
William Nylander.
There you go.
Calgary zone.
Wee Willie. So I think in a time where the last time Ottawa was there, it was Colorado and it was Ottawa. And so you had Landeskog and you had Alfredsson went over. He wasn't that long retired, right? You sort of had these.
Still had Carlson.
Very familiar faces. Good point on yours. And so, yeah, you had these names and faces that Swedes would gravitate towards. I just think beyond the fact that I don't want my team doing it 2 months in, I think you've missed the boat on the location.
Winnipeg Jets coach Rick Bowness seems to think that his team has missed the boat completely on round one. Did you happen to catch his comments? I have them here for anyone who hasn't. Have you heard him?
I have, but I would love to hear them again.
Okay. Why don't we do that?
Just overall thoughts on that one.
Overall thoughts? I'm so disappointed and disgusted right now. That's my thoughts.
Where does the disgust come from?
Pardon me?
Where does the disgust come from?
No pushback. But it's the same crap we saw in February. It was. That's why so as soon as we were challenging for first place and teams were coming after us, we had no pushback. This series, we had no pushback. Their better players were so much better than ours, it's not even close.
Feels like you've been holding these feelings on for a bit. Is it just out of tonight's game or finally wanting to release that?
It started back in January and February.
What is it about this team's leadership core or the top end players we've talked about?
We got to push back. There's got to be a pushback. There's got to be pride. You got to be able to push back when things aren't going your way. We had no pushback. Their better players were so much better than ours tonight. They deserved to win. They were the better team in the regular season. They were the better team in this series. Anything else? Good. Thanks.
Anything else? I'm fucking out of here. That was it. That was the entire press conference after Winnipeg was eliminated in 5 games by the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't know if either one of us were on record ever making like full picks. I don't think either one of us were shocked that Winnipeg lost to Vegas.
No.
But that's a pretty strong condemnation from their coach, who just earlier today, before you and I started recording, Kevin Cheveldayoff, GM of Winnipeg, came out and said, yeah, he'll be back next year. So that will be interesting, man. What do you make of the Jets' end of the season? Well,
I guess that means Marty Johnson's not going to be on the podcast this summer. It's really, to hear somebody be that honest, it's like you needed the minor hockey 24-hour rule. It's like and this is a guy who's been behind the bench, either in a head coach or an assistant coach capacity, more than anybody else
forever
in NHL history.
Right.
And so this is a man who endured the first couple of seasons with the Ottawa Senators. He's seen shit. He's seen shit hockey.
Yes.
And endured is the word, right?
Man, yeah.
And so to hear him speak so honestly, like the word disgusted is like I've just seen and smelt something that is so bad. I'm disgusted.
Right.
And so I think when we saw Paul Maurice step away, and I think you and I both talking about Paul Maurice leaving midseason last year, we sort of were like, Yeah, you don't quit on the
That's
team.
weak. Yeah.
But we also sort of had, it was a very middle of the road sort of take, but that team is needs something, right?
Yep.
It needs something. And then Bowness comes in this summer and strips Wheeler of the captaincy.
Yep.
And you're like, man, that's bull. What happens, right? They sort of seem to mend the fences with Scheifele and things, man, right through the first 3 months of the season. They were first in the NHL at one point. If for sure the West, the Bruins, I think, had a pretty firm hold on the NHL. But it is one of those things where you thought, man, they're cooking, they're rolling. They have this good goalie, and they finally, Bowness has found a way to connect with.
Get them to play a little better defensively
with the core, right? Yeah. And Ehlers was having a fantastic season, and he was one of those guys who was, you're like, yeah, he has these flashes. He seemed to be bringing it, and Kyle Connor and Wheeler and Dubois, you sort of, they just, to me, they had a lot of things that you look, and I know you haven't been as positive on them as I have, but at this point now, you have to, you've said your coach is coming back.
Somebody else isn't.
For sure, and that's the case. And I think you get rid of Dubois if you can.
Well, this is the whole thing. As you said, I've never loved that core, and they did spend half of the year up top, and I'm looking at it going, well, maybe I'm wrong, right? But maybe instead of looking at the first half as what they really are, and the second half is the fall off, we look at the first half as the outlier, and the second half where they're what they've been for the last few years as
25th best record in the NHL from middle January on.
And so I'm glad you brought up Paul Maurice, because he went out in a way that neither one of us really loved. But you're right, we kind of, maybe there's something going on in that. But now you have a second coach, one who's been there only a year, and who doesn't need to protect his reputation. Like, he was retired last summer.
And would retire again in a heartbeat.
And so for him to now come out, a second coach in as many years, coming out and saying, what's happening in that room sucks, right? Like, this group internally, there's something rotten in there, and he's not afraid to say it. And you mentioned trying to trade Dubois. There's a few guys you'd look at trading, but like Wheeler's got another year at $8 million. Scheifele's got another year at $6 million. That's not terrible. Like, you might get someone to do that, but it is only for a year, so it'll be limited return. And Dubois has basically already told the world,
free agency, baby.
I'm going to Montreal. So if they're trading, if anyone else is trading for him, you're only getting him for a year, and Montreal's not giving you what you want because
they know they're getting him for free.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
So I don't know what you do with this group, but once you come out and say that coach is coming back, something significant is going to have to change in that dressing room before the season starts, you would think, because Wheeler did come out. He said, I didn't like what he said. I wish he'd said it in private, and that's all fair enough. But clearly, this is a second coach in as many years who's gone, our group sucks, like something's wrong in here. Not sucks talent-wise, but there's something wrong in that room.
Well, and he kept using the term pushback, and I think that's just a safe word for saying there's no sack in that room.
Right.
There's no grit. No moxie.
Way better press conference if you come out. They got no sack.
There's no sack in that room, right? But whatever your everyday, average 9-to-5 lunch bucket hockey fan who's watching that, if that's their team, that's what they're saying. So he said, I think, what most fans feel like, whether that's a good thing or not. I can't say.
Oh yeah, you're so right about the 24-hour. Like, that was clearly said in emotion, right? One of the phrases I saw used online that I thought was really good is, on the night you're eliminated, the elimination is the message. Like, you don't have to be that hard on them that night. You're already out. You're done. They know it wasn't good enough. So I kind of liked that phrase. I'm going to hold on to it and use it down the road.
Whoever's bringing that reason taken below me.
Because it's far less entertaining, right? We want these guys out here.
Sky is falling radio, man. What was happening here?
But yeah, it's to me going to be really tough to bring back that group. And really the only guys up front that I'm super excited to keep are Connor and Ehlers.
Yep. Yeah.
Beyond that, take it or leave. But it's I don't know.
Kyle Connor is the centerpiece of this team moving forward, right?
When we do this thing every year where they do that thing where it's the most underrated players in the league and everyone says Sasha Barkov, even though we've said it for years, so he's probably not that underrated. It might be Kyle Connor.
Well, wasn't it 2 years ago he was most overrated and underrated in the same...
Barkov?
Yeah, in the same thing. You're like, that guy's so underrated, he's overrated.
We'll get to it, but in the series that he's playing in right now, slightly overrated, slightly underrated.
Yeah,
so.
You know who's not? Matthew Tkachuk.
Nope.
But that Winnipeg team is calling out for, at minimum, a retool.
Yes.
Right? And
Hellebuck's come out and said, not interested in a rebuild. Like, if you're doing that, I'm out. And he's only got a year left on his contract.
How much interest do you have in Connor Hellebuck?
I have a lot, but not at what, like, he's going to want Bobrovsky money.
So, but they talk about him, and you hear it all the time. This is a Vezina caliber goal, and he did win a Vezina. Mm-hmm. That did happen. But you see Vezina goalie for that guy in the first half of the season, and whether it's overuse, man, that guy is rarely second half the same as he is first half.
Interesting.
Right? If you look at it continually, and I'm one of those guys too. For years, they've been sort of that team where I'm like, I kind of like what Winnipeg's got going on, and they do have Hellebuck, and I think I've seen enough sort of small docs and personal bits on him. I kind of like the guy.
Yeah.
He seems, and he's invested time and energy in and around the Winnipeg area. Like, he seems like an American guy who's come up and
embraced he's Brady Tkachuk'd it.
Yeah, and so you kind of got a lot of time for that guy, but man, it just hasn't seemed to have been late season and playoff like he is in November, December, and so I would have some questions at his age and just whether I want. Now, he's not super old, but just in terms of. Yeah, I'm not paying anybody goalie Bob money or Vasilevsky money.
This is it. Like, I'm not paying any goalie that, and he's going to want that. And someone will give him $8-9 million, I would assume, but not me.
Well, see, it takes me back to, and I reference it all the time, the Scotty Mac session here where he was giving it to me over the Carey Price contract, right?
Yeah.
And he was bullish on the idea, no, man, I'm never paying my goalie $10 million.
Right.
Because the difference between a $6 million goalie and a $10 million goalie, negligible, right?
Not big enough, yeah.
And so, in terms of the cap, it eats up. So, yeah, I am super interested. And if you're eating some of that Wheeler money, 50%, if you can bring back
He does seem to be the problem that comes up. Like, you and I aren't in that room, but...
I am occasionally.
Okay. Throwing people's tracksuits in the shower and stirring shit up.
I go in for that.
Yeah, it's he would be the first one I'm trying to move out the door, I think.
And I think I've moved on from Scheifele.
Yeah. But I mean, it's $6 million. He's worth that.
Yeah, but I think you could also, if you could sort of sign and trade or work something out in that fashion for somebody who was bullish on him, I think the Montreal Canadiens are loving Scheifele.
And Dubois.
Especially
take
after
the whole core down.
Especially
there,
after the Jake Evans hit, I think that's. I think he's a fan favorite,
no doubt.
But yeah, I think you're moving both those guys, in my opinion, if you can, and you just start to sort of retool. I'm not sure they're in a spot where they need to totally blow it up or rebuild it, but I think you certainly need to take a good chunk of that forward core out.
Yeah, it's not a place that it easily attracts free agents, so you're going to have to be smart here if you're trading any of these pieces, bringing back a lot of either, prospects or draft capital that you can control for a long time because, we've seen it. You can often convince your own guys to stay. They've had some success doing that, but bringing in free agents who've never been there, that's a struggle. So, like a lot of Canadian markets.
For sure it is. Yeah. For sure. If you're not Vancouver, Toronto, or Montreal, and even Montreal has its problems with the language, right?
Yeah.
People are like,
and taxes.
And taxes.
Oh, the taxes.
Yeah. But if you're not one of the big markets,
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard. You have to be a Canadian market that is rolling. And you're like, that's a team in ascension or competing right now. Maybe then you can look at a piece. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And Winnipeg is... Man, it's really in the hinterland.
I want to check in just briefly on our pal Jack Edwards, play-by-play man for the Boston Bruins, who the last time we talked about, I sort of wondered if he was drunk.
Yeah, we both talked about
or had a stroke at some point. He was kind of slurring, and it was when Linus Ullmark scored a goal.
You're not going
He scores! Linus Solberg!
Like, I've never liked Jack Edwards, but I don't ever remember him sounding like that before.
Yes.
Until this week. And actually, until Game 6. And as you, good listener, are hearing this, you've already found out how Game 7 played out between the Panthers and the Bruins. But in the third period of Game 6, that game was fucking wild, back and forth, lead changes. And at one point, the Boston Bruins score a shorthanded goal, and Jack Edwards had this to say as it happened.
To the rink, Saka unopposed to DeBrus. Oh! A short-handed goal! Jake DeBrus! A shorty to put the Bruins up 5-4 with 9.5 to go!
It's very, you mentioned it last time, very Harry Carey in the way he's, and I don't know if this is new Jack.
I'm also getting a little Barney from The Simpsons.
Okay, I get that. The scream is one thing, but the slur is back.
Yeah.
Right? Everything. I don't know what's happened to Jack Edwards.
Oh!
Yeah.
That might be actually me in Game 6 when the Leafs scored in overtime. Just
Johnny Toronto!
Oh!
I don't know what's up with Jack, man.
Yeah. Okay. See, we've hit Jack pretty hard on this show
and we will continue
over the many years that we've been on this pod. I thought you were going to come out and say, "Yeah, turns out Jack has had a streak." So I was like, "Oh, okay,
no.
Are we going to get that Flintstone heel over our heads here?"
It's Nate in the corner. People died.
Yeah. God love you, Nate. God, that's way back for you.
That's like episode 9 or something of the Tall Can Audio podcast.
Even then, you're like, Psh, come on, man.
Yeah. Look, we'll come back around to the playoffs here in a little bit. As a young man, were you a Jerry Springer viewer?
Hated it.
Really? Okay.
Hated it.
Okay. So I got to that point where I hated it, but when it's at its prime, I'm like 15.
Oh, yeah.
16. I might see some obscured boobs, right? Some blurred boobs getting thrown out. There's people throwing chairs at each other and swearing.
Steve.
Like you could buy, and maybe you still can, like the Jerry Springer security t-shirt was a hot item for a while.
Yeah.
Remember those t-shirt stands that would always be in the middle of your mall, right? They would have South Park shirts and wrestling shirts, and often the Jerry Springer security t-shirt. You're looking at me like your mall was classier than that, but not in Oshawa, man. We had the
dirty schwa. Yeah. Come on, man. Peterborough never has those.
Okay. But Jerry Springer, surprised how many people didn't know this, a mayor of Cincinnati before he had the talk show. And then, at one point, that show, did I mention he died? This is why we're bringing up Jerry Springer.
Just for fun?
Yeah,
No, you did not mention
reminisce about Jerry Springer.
Jer had passed away.
Yeah, last week, Jerry Springer died at the age of late 70s. And so it was a show, though, that as a young kid and at 15, 16, you're like, this is the greatest thing on television. And at its peak, it had months where it outrated Oprah, which was probably more of a statement about us than
of course it is.
than him.
To me, it's a hard turn. Society sort of went hard in a different direction.
Right.
Like when you have people chanting because there's a hooker who's fighting your wife on the stage and has lost her dentures. Like it's the hooker with dentures. Yeah. Well, and I was looking I was looking at some of the highlights of the show.
Sure.
And so Steve or whatever his name was comes out and he puts the dentures in a glass. And then before he hands it over to her, he holds it up and the fans start chanting and you're like, oh my, hooker, dentures, fighting my wife. How can you not love that?
This is the same time period where I'm watching Stone Cold drink beer and whack people over the head with a chair while Sable's taking her shirt off in the background, right? Like, that's quality television. It is the point where society crumbled, is Jerry Springer, the WWF Attitude Era, Girls Gone Wild tapes, right? Like, this is all at the same time. And, man, it's wild to think that was a guy who ran a city.
Yeah.
And his next career is just like, I wonder if I can get people to come in and talk about their illegitimate children and, well, surprise, we've got them here backstage. Come on out here.
Yeah, well, his biggest thing he did as mayor of Cincinnati was have a cheap trick day. Like, so now in Cincinnati, there's an annual cheap trick day.
Still on the books.
Yeah.
All right.
So there you go. Jerry Springer is responsible for that, just so you know, ladies and gentlemen.
Go on to
Now,
have a lot of cheap tricks.
I got that tidbit from WKRP back in the day, so
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure.
It may be
It may not be factual.
Right. Okay. I can't believe it, man.
No, but yeah, the highlight that I loved the best was when they had members of the KKK on to debate the Jewish Defense League. And
Sounds like a great episode of the Family Feud.
slap my cheeks, it turned into a brawl. Right?
I can't believe it.
Who knew the JDL and the KKK were going to throw down on Jerry Springer? And you're just like, oh my God, this is so...
And it's 3 p.m. Like, it's not a late night show. It's just middle of the day up against Camilla Scott or whatever the hell else was going on.
Soon to be Ricky Lake.
Right. Awesome.
Oh, man, it's just... And it was such trash.
Of course it was.
Such trash. And so...
May he rest in peace.
Yeah. But again, that's a guy who... Yeah, you know what? It comes down to, and forever, back to the Roman times, the Greeks, people want to see freak shows.
Yes.
And no matter what happens...
That's why they're listening to this.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, give the people what they want.
Right.
Yeah, and you go, I want to see the guy who cut both his own legs off because that's what he thought he needed to do for his art. Yeah. Yeah. And so where you find these people, and I love the idea that these people came out thinking that somehow the Jerry Springer show was going to heal their family. My sister, the stripper, is sleeping with my fourth boyfriend. You're like,
We should go on television and talk about it.
Yes, exactly. And then bring the sister out. And then sister's fighting. And you're like, oh, it's so... It's like, really, it's pulling the curtains back.
You whore.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's preying on these stupid people.
Yeah.
And like, do you remember that it was sort of viral bum fights? Do you remember that?
Actually, yes, I do.
You know, it just... That came out around the same time, right? Late 90s, early 2000s. And you're like, what is happening here? You get the one bum who's going to get a tattoo on his forehead.
Winner gets a sandwich.
For a bottle of Absolute or whatever it is. And then you've paid another bum to slap him on the forehead as soon as he comes out. Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, who's watching this? Other than my older brother, who's watching this?
One of those shows that did not get a reboot in 2020s, right? Like,
no, but they did make movies out of Jackass, right?
Course.
Which is not that far from it,
No,
right?
it's
So,
not.
how about, Matt, how much would it take for you to wet your testicles and then sit on an ice horse?
You can't afford it.
Yes, but this is it, right? Somebody's willing to do it, Matt.
100%. Oh my God.
That's where we are.
Yeah. We're.
And now it just shows up on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or Insta.
Insta.
How about a little Insta inspo?
A little inspo.
Yeah, stupid fucking people.
Rest in peace, Jerry Springer.
Nope.
No. Okay.
Burn!
As we sit here right now, Jay's up in Game 3 of their series against the Seattle Mariners, but on a hell of a run. 500 on a road trip through Houston and New York, then swept the White Sox, which, just terrible.
They're trash.
Yeah, the Mariners struggling, don't look anything like what they looked like last year.
They got some talent in that lineup,
They do,
though.
yeah. And, Julio Rodriguez especially, keep an eye on that fucking guy because he'll hurt you fast.
This just in, that guy who won Rookie of the Year last year, he may be good.
Pretty good. Pretty good. But it's been a while since you and I spoke about the Jays. Actually, as we go all the way back, I don't even know if the season had started.
Yeah, it would have been close.
It would have been close.
It would have been close. And at that time, I was saying, with the tough schedule they had, right? Because they had Tampa and they had
Houston and New York
and the Yankees, and yeah, there was all these things. And I thought, you know what? If they can just come out of April sort of in the 500 range, maybe a bit above, right? But you're like, it's a tough start on the road. They started out with like a 10-game road trip.
Yeah.
If you could sort of look at coming back sort of, I don't know, 14-12 or 15-11, whatever it was.
They were like Fuck you, Rob.
Yeah. So if they win today, they go to 19-9, I believe. And now I've watched, the better part of virtually every game.
Right.
I am super dialed into it. I'm loving it. It's just anecdotal, but the hitting seems to be a little cool. Sort of the right now it's 8-4, but the 1-0 game, the 2-2, and you sort of double back. It seems like the pitching, they're now in the range of.
Well, the bottom half of that lineup has been not producing very much. Like Brandon Peld hasn't worked out.
Varshall's been super cold.
Got off to a nice start, but since April 7th, like all his slash numbers are in the 100s.
Yeah.
Now he does walk it off on Saturday. That'll make you feel good.
Yeah, Kiermaier is also cooled after his hot start, and so
now at least you weren't banking on him bringing you much.
No, for sure you weren't. But when you are putting up runs early, and
Springer's struggled. Like Bo and Vladdy are doing nice things. Chapman is putting up an MVP caliber year, which is lovely in a contract year. Probably not too surprising. But yeah, it's been the pitching, right? And that rotation that had major question marks.
The back end of the rotation especially.
Yeah. It's probably too soon to go, well, Barrios is fixed. But he's looked nice.
It's too soon for that.
And Yusei Kikuchi has been borderline dominant at times, right? Like the way he's performed. Bassett, who had one bad start to start the year, a bad first inning in his second start, and has been really good ever since. Gosman, terrific, and Manoah, still some things to be worked out there. I'm not sure what's happening.
You have no idea which Manoah you're going to get when he comes out. Now, he went back on Friday night.
Yep. Against
he struggled.
Steele, yeah.
Struggled hard, walked forward, hit a guy.
But went deep, like kept you...
Went 5.
Yeah.
Went 5 and did not get the win. Yeah, you allowed that team to that offensive lineup to come through, right? So it is one of those things where in a season you do have the moments where the pitchers carry it. Sometimes when the lineup carries it, right? Mm-hmm. It's rare when you have the two things working in tandem.
Yeah.
All the time, right? But I'll tell you what, when whatever happens today with the Mariners, right, hoping for the sweep, it's a 7th, I think. It's 8-4 Jays at this point. Mm-hmm. They will have gone 7 in a row. I hope I never have to hear about the 2-game wildcard series again. Like, to me, Sportsnet has just been forcing that down my throat, right, in terms of the flashback to last October. And you're like...
So, just to be clear, you find it irritating as a Toronto sports fan to have all your past failures crammed down your throat, especially the spectacular ones.
Well, I find it. I do find.
Welcome aboard, friend.
Yeah, I do find it annoying when it's coming from the official broadcaster of that team.
Can't help you, man.
Yeah, well, yours is usually coming from.
It's just as often coming from the broadcast.
Yeah, well, and the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation or Sportsnet or whoever's covering it really is supposed to be a national, but they seem to be filleting the Leafs and the Leafs.
You think that's what's happening? Do you?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah.
The Jays. Yeah, it was one. The game 1 loss happened.
Castillo was awesome.
It was not much you were going to be able to do about that. Game 2 was fucking spectacular implosion, right? Like,
for sure. So
you're right. I could stand here less about it, but it was one game at a horrible time to have it happen. And
right. And I'm not saying we don't bring it up, but we heard about it on Friday. Mm-hmm. We heard about it again on today is now game 2 of this series.
That beat you.
And game 2 of that last series. And you're like, all right, we've done it all. We've done the retrospective. It was fucking horrible.
Yeah. Couple quick notes. Leafs. I was going to do the thing. Blue Jays did just recently get through New York City. And Vladdy, once again, almost unprompted, reminded everybody that he hates the New York Yankees, will never sign with the New York Yankees. I think the first time we heard about this was during the off season. It was like a school day event, and it was sort of playful, right? Like one of the kids asked him, "Who do you like beating the most?" And it's easy to say the Yankees, right? Like who cares?
Yeah, of course.
They're the evil empire. And now though, it's New York media that he's saying it to, and like it's becoming a thing. And so of course, New York turns around and boos him, as they're going to do. I wonder if Vladdy's agent isn't saying to him, hey, you don't ever actually have to go there, but could you stop ruling it out while I'm trying to negotiate your monster extension?
Yeah. That you're eventually going to sign with the Dodgers or the Padres, but we could use the Yankees to drive up that price.
So it's weird to me, though, to see Vladdy, who, like, he's goofing around at first base with all kinds of people. Like, Vladdy is loved in Toronto, but he's not really hated anywhere, right? Like, he's a star. He's smiling all the time.
Big, round, smiley face.
Right. And yet there's New York City booing him. It's
let's go, Burger Boy.
It's odd to watch, man. Him be hated somewhere.
Well, and I loved it when in the rubber match of that series, he hooks that fucking rocket, right? That frozen rope into the left field stands, and he's got the fist up coming around first, like, and the fans are booing.
Take that, New York.
You do not love that? Because this is hard on the heels of the Who's Your Vladdy last year when he hit 2 homers and 2 doubles, or 3 homers and 2 double, whatever it was, off Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Garrett Cole. But yeah, to me,
it seems legit. Like, he does not like New York.
Well, and if he doesn't, he's certainly enjoying
playing into it,
the booze and and again, to me, that's another little feather in your cap as an elite athlete. When I want to bring on the hate, and especially from one of the markets that are renowned for vociferous fans, right? You go, I'm going to ride into the Bronx, and I'm going to shoot you the middle finger.
I'm going to crush you, and then I'm going to hate you.
Yeah, and guess what? And I'm never signing here because you suck. I'm going to eat your lunch.
Right. I've eaten a few people's.
Yeah, I love the soft serve ice cream in the locker room.
When the White Sox were in town, Charlie Montoyo, who has signed with the White Sox as a bench coach, of course, dismissed last year mid-season by the Jays as their manager. He was, I guess, I don't know how this works, whether it's offered or whether he heard and reached out and declined, but like they were going to do one of their video board, welcome back kind of things. Thank you for your service to the Blue Jays. And he requested that they not do it.
Don't do it.
And the whole time he was here, he turned down media requests for any sort of interviews. And he's the bench coach. He's under no obligation to do it. But it does seem odd, especially when the PR guy can fill out a little cue card for you that just says, love my time in Toronto. Sorry it didn't work. I'm disappointed it didn't work out here. I'm very happy with, Chicago and the young group that we have that might be good in a few years, whatever.
Supposed to be good.
It was odd to me that a guy who was so he got pretty soft treatment here, like universally liked, right? Like a good guy.
Not here in this studio.
No, perhaps not. But were you surprised that he took that particular tact when he came back here?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all. I think the way it ended, I think there was great chippiness.
Little bad blood.
Yeah, I think
Montoyo.
I think between him and the management, I think things had far exceeded their course, and I think he was.
Well, then why not accept the media invite and roast them? Right?
Well, I guess maybe you wait for the Jays to roll back into Chicago,
a little friendlier media, maybe?
and then maybe you blast the. Cut this tape just so you know for later when it happens. That I think it comes down to I think he's partially afraid what happens when they flash him up on the board. Now Toronto's a soft crowd.
They would have cheered him. He was liked.
But there was lots of people. There was lots of people saying his choice of handling the pitchers wasn't great. Mm-hmm. Like that was loud from many different directions.
Yeah.
And I think he was. They had to be in his mind that he's bitter and chippy, and I got to think that in some ways he was like, "Yeah, fuck it, I don't want it. I don't want to see that."
I'll be honest with you. I was surprised, because
would you cheer?
I would have given the plate the
golf clap.
Yeah, and I think that's what he would have gotten. They'd have put it up there. It wouldn't have been a giant standing ovation like Teo got, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think he would have gotten a polite applause. You come out, you tip your cap, or you don't, right? Whatever, but. I was surprised that he turned it all down. Just knowing, and I guess I don't know, but observing his demeanor the time that he was in Toronto, it was a little surprising to have him turn all of that down. And
He came across as a friendly guy.
Yeah,
for sure. But he's got a little bit of that Latin flair.
I was going to say Latin Gibby is the way I kind of looked at.
A little spicy jalapeno there. Sure. A little, he's got. So I can only imagine that he left and he felt like he didn't like the shortcomings of some of the selections or the way the team was management's fault,
but not the fans' fault.
Nope. And that's Matt. You're now asking somebody to go. I just want to, because who knows what he's heard, right?
100%, right?
Right, how much he followed social media.
He might be legitimately hurt by the way this went down or whatever. And he's found a landing spot, and good for him. I just, I
wouldn't hire that guy as a manager if I was elsewhere.
No, I think he'll be in tough to get another.
I think he's one of those classic in hockey. He's a classic and assistant coach, right?
Yeah.
He's a classic assistant who is, I'm going to be the go-between, the good guy. I think when it comes to making hard decisions, I don't think he was great, right? And so I think he got caught up with my personal relationship with guys, and that affected the way he ran his pitching staff and who got into the lineup at what time and who came out in key moments.
One guy who showed up in a key moment during the debacle last October that you're done hearing about is Teoscar Hernandez, who hit 2 home runs. And at the time when the Jays are up 7-1, you're like, this is going to be the Teo game. It's not quite the bat flip, but it's going to be there with the Donaldson dash. It'll be Edwin's home run in the wild card game. Teoscar looked fantastic, and then they imploded, and then they blew up the outfield and changed everything around. And he was the first guy traded away.
Came in, turned out to be more like the Rugnet Odor punch to the chin.
Yes. But he made his return this weekend to Toronto. An interesting moment only in the sense that we've seen a couple of times, and it's not the only interesting part of it, but he was able to take a second when he came up for his first at bat. Manoah stepped off the mound, and the umpire stepped back and allowed him to have a moment. We've seen a couple times early on with this pitch clock, guys getting rung up for a strike when they take a second to acknowledge the crowd for cheering them coming home.
That's shit.
It sucks. And so Shai Davidi on Sportsnet.ca had a piece over the course of the weekend where he actually spoke to the umpire chief this weekend and said, how was that handled? And he said, this has become a thing. We don't want to see that stuff happening in terms of, people getting burned for their, returns. And he said, MLB has 2 policies. The first one is that they are requesting that teams, looking ahead on their schedule, give them a 24-hour notice. We think the fans might do this for somebody coming in, or our guy is close to a milestone, and then MLB can give the umpires a heads up. And the second policy is that the umpires have been empowered if that notice hasn't been given, but they recognize it for themselves, or a manager or somebody tells them, hey, keep your eye out. Don't fuck with this. And this umpire, whose name escapes me right now, but it was a good piece, and we'll share the link. He said, we don't want to screw these moments up, right? The pitch clock is meant to keep the game moving along at the pace it's supposed to move along, but this is outside of play.
Right.
And I thought it was an interesting piece. He said, I had already gotten the heads up from MLB, but even without that, I looked out and Manoah wasn't stepping up onto the mound, right? He knew what was going to happen too. So there's another piece of acknowledgement, and they give Hernandez a minute to stand there without being dinged by the pitch clock, kind of wave to the crowd, tip the cap, all that stuff, and give him a nice moment. Are you okay with that sort of thing, or should we be a little more rigid on the clock? And
really, it just would have expedited Teo's at bat because he struck out 3 times, both game 1 and 2. So ring him up on the first one and shorten his time in the box. If you want to speed up the game, let it go. No, but Shai was on the broadcast as well, not just with the article. So I didn't read the article, but he sort of recapped that on air Saturday,
right?
And talked about the two other notable occasions, one with the Dodgers,
Bellinger,
I believe, and one with Philly. Anyways, the 2 other occasions where this happened, and so
the guy, and for people who might have missed those guys coming up to the bat, the fans, because he's coming back to a place he played for a long time, the fans are giving him a standing ovation. So he stops, kind of waves, tips his cap, and the ump's like, "Fuck you, strike one, motherfucker!" Like, this sucks, right?
Yeah, and so it's the classic case of we're trying to implement new rules, and I've got to be hard. I can't allow any leniency. I can't be soft anywhere. I got to be rigid. But the reality is you go, yeah, no one's going to come back and say, hey, I need this. You know, Danny Jansen is playing 300 kilometers from his hometown. And
Right.
It's just,
let him have a nice moment here.
Yeah, whatever it is, they've done it right. And so this crew just did a fantastic job, in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah. This is one of those things that we love about sports. It's not just the game. You have to allow for those moments, right? People who are, like you said, coming home or coming back to a place or whatever it might be. If fans want to acknowledge them, they're the ones paying the bills here. So give them a minute to do it. And
you know what was interesting with the Teo return, and I love that guy here, right?
Yeah.
He was
a bit of a klutz in right field, but popular guy.
To
good
me,
hitter.
he had that frying pan for a glove, right? 100%. Sometimes it just went bad, right? And so you thought, but man, when he was going, and two silver sluggers, right? Like he could hit the ball. We saw, how susceptible he could be and how streaky he could be, this weekend, but. It was interesting on the Saturday broadcast when they were talking to Kevin Gausman about, because he pitched in game 2.
Right.
So it was more of that. And they were saying, what this year, how is there? And he's like, Mom, different years, new guys in the lineup. And to me, it was, we are a better defensive ball club. Mm-hmm. And so you look around the infield and you're like, Chapman, check. Bichette, check. Guerrero, check. Mixed bag at second, check, like last year. You're like, oh, wait. Hernandez gone. Gurriel gone.
Yep. Springer out of center and over to right.
And then you're like, oh, okay. So it's and I'm not sure Gausman intended it that way, but it's certainly on Teo's return. It certainly comes across
Glad
as.
we don't have that guy's glove out there.
Yeah, woo, man, I am way better without that guy.
Right.
And so I'm sure that's not how he intended it, but that's certainly how Negative Bob over here took it.
Last year, Gausman's numbers would suggest that he was one of the 3 unluckiest pitchers
anti-shift guy too,
in
right?
history. Like the pitches he would make that look like a routine fly ball into left field that someone flubs or
clang,
right, just gets through the infield. Like his pitches. There's several stats that measure it, but that suggest you made a good pitch and what should have been an out was not made an out.
Right.
He's probably not too disappointed to see Varsho, Springer, and Kiermaier behind him now instead of
right.
Gurriel.
Do you remember last year he was the one saying, can we not shift?
Yeah.
Because they were saying he was, as you said, also showed that the shift hurt him.
It was burning him the way he pitches.
The most, right? And so he's like, can we not do that? And they're like, nope. That's what we do. And you're like, fuck, man. But I'm looking at the stats. Are you not looking at the stats?
And to defend him, here we are with no shift, and he's off to an incredible start. Right now, he was good last year too, but fuck, man, maybe
he's got dirty shit. Am I right?
Yeah.
Like when 13 strikeouts on Saturday in a game where he kind of struggled a bit.
Yep.
Right, but when you look
had some traffic around the bases, right, but never let anybody.
When you're like the guy, so he struggled a bit, but he had 13 strikeouts and 1 walk. It's that 1 walk. And you're like, that guy sucks. That sucks. Right? Like, and then looking at his
and the Jays win that game with only 3 hits. So like he held him in again, like kind of like Manoah earlier on. Like he was better than Manoah, but
yeah. Well, and how much? And he was saying he was dominant against the Yankees in a win the previous week, and where he struck out 11, walked none, and then he's like, yeah. The funny thing is, I actually had better stuff in the Astros game where I gave up 7 in the 1 inning. And you're like, get the fuck out of here. Does anybody buy that when, it's like the person who says, hey, Matt, you lost weight? You're like, no, I've actually gained 5 pounds.
Fucker.
Yeah, like, you tell me I'm fat? You tell me I need to lose weight?
I feel like you just wanted to say that. That's why I'm bringing this up.
No. But it's the idea that you're like, I actually had better stuff in the game where I gave up 7.
That was quite a game too, because he did give up 7 in that first inning and then hung around and pitched well after that to keep it. Like the game was over, but you save your bullpen, right? Like, okay, this is a fucking lost cause, and he stays in there for I think 6 innings. He might have in that game,
7, I believe,
and rest your bullpen, knowing he's still on this road trip. It's a tough one, and admirable, man.
He's a killer. And so to me it was, I didn't know a lot about him when he came. I knew he was in Baltimore, then he went to the Giants. Yeah. And he was kind of trash with the Orioles, but the Orioles were trash, right?
Exactly.
And so
when in trash.
Yeah. And so it was funny because they talked about Robbie Ray leaving, senior tight pants.
Out for the year.
And how they needed to replace that guy. And you go, Cy Young guy. How do you replace a guy who wins the Cy Young?
Yeah.
And then they go, Gosman, okay, yeah, he's going to be a middle rotation guy, but man, he has had ace kind of numbers and pitching
100%
since he's been here in the sort of season and a quarter, right? So whatever it is, season plus.
Yep.
And so, yeah, with the very low, strikeout to walk ratio, and by low I mean like 11 to none.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that guy, he's just a gamer, and you just love that guy.
So what do we think of the beer before we move on to some hockey here?
It's a sipping beer.
Yeah.
I didn't
Just
mind
a small can. And it took us the better part of an hour there to...
Yeah, but sipping away on it, and to me, it didn't finish as boozy as it maybe started.
Never does, though. I don't know what that's
It's
about.
It had that nice... to me, when you double up on the alcohol, it doesn't get as roasty as I would like in a stout.
Yeah.
So it did lean a little bit more towards licorice than any kind of coffee that I sort of traditionally like in a stout. But yeah, it was sort of a sipping beer. Probably is where I'd go with that. What about you?
Yeah, same. It kind of had, like I said off the top, a little bit of that licorice to it that I always associate with the boozier stouts for whatever reason. It kind of brings that with it. But enjoyed it. Nice beer. Right. Yeah.
That's a big change of pace right there.
What do you got on your second one there?
Excuse me.
All right. Okay.
All right. Leaning, bobbing left, weaving right. This is just an American lager. Now, why we need to call it an American lager, I feel like breweries, the smaller guys now, it's got to be a Norwegian lager. It's got to be something, right? It can't just be beer.
Golden lager.
Comes in a yellow can with black writing and says beer on it. This is actually a funky sort of can. This is an American lager. It's called Keats American Lager from Stormstade Brewing out of London, Ontario.
Yeah, okay. It's only been in the last maybe 6 months I've started to hear about them. I don't know if they're new or they hadn't been on my radar. But
okay, so yeah, in my monthly shipment, whether it's like they come late, it's my April shipment, I guess.
All right.
I got a couple of different offerings from Stormstade. So this is the one. It's a nice 4.8%. It's going to nicely fall. Again, the small can. Not loving the small can.
Right.
But I do have places to be after the show.
Sure.
So bladder-wise, not a bad idea.
Keeping her under control here.
So, but I do have two of them.
Yeah.
Because
fuck it.
I don't want to get cheated on the MLs, right? You know what I mean? It's got to be beers is beers.
Right.
So it's a nice follow-up, but it is a harsh sort of brake torque on the reverse, and it's a beer. That's what it tastes like. If you said, "Hey, what's a beer taste like?" That right there.
One, this one. Yeah.
Sort of just it's high school.
Right. Okay.
What do you got over there?
This is Rob. You may have heard of it a time or two.
I think
Canadian.
you've said my name.
I think this is the first time, other than when I told the listener.
The 8 times before the show when you kept saying, Rob, you've missed this. Rob, you didn't plug this in right. I'm going to say,
that's true.
I think that's the most I've heard you say my name, other than calling me
there are many
great
names.
guy.
Oh, yeah.
Not the hero we want, but the hero we need. Those sorts of things.
Not the hero we want, but the hero they've sent. This is a Molson Canadian.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just run through it quickly, but because I told the story on the pod last night. And for those of you who have somehow missed it, Maddie Lang and I have been running Buds and Bolts post-game shows.
What's that all about?
We'll need a new title, I guess, for round 2.
Buds and Bees?
Buds and Bees, probably, yeah. God, you have no idea how hard I'll be cheering for the Panthers tonight.
Panthers!
Yeah. But the old man was here on Monday night, watched the game, and at 4-1, he's kind of, you never know, they might get back. I'm just glaring at him like, there is no chance.
Easy, optimistic old guy.
Yeah, they are not getting back in this. And at 4-2 in the third, when Matthews scores, I'm still like, I've seen this 100 times. They hook you in long enough, right? Let's keep you, string you along, whatever. And then a 4-3. And then Dad was much like me, not often the optimist, but he was that night. And so when we were heading into overtime,
4-3, I was sure they were tying it.
Game 6, two things happened. I realized if I was going to do a post-game podcast, and I have no idea how long this overtime is going to be, I need to pump the brakes on the Bacardi that I had been ingesting throughout the game. And so when looking for a beer, I said, well, the old man's not here to be optimistic. Maybe he'll drink some of his beer.
Oh, okay.
And it worked. So long live the Molson Canadian.
No.
Yeah, this is bad for all sorts of reasons for you. Pushed the Leafs over the top and your general disdain for Molson Canadian until it's the only thing left in the fridge.
Until it's a late night at Matt's and we're like, hey, what's happening? I guess it's that Molson.
So don't need to tell the good listener much about the Molson Canadian. You know what it is, and it was ringing true today, man.
Well, and it's funny because that's what I was going to say about this beer.
Molson Canadian.
Right. This American lager it's like, and Molson Canadian was what I was going to say, but then I'm like, nah, we hate that. It sucks. So just keep moving on.
Let's hold on to, I'm sure you have thoughts on the Leaf series. Let's hold off on that because we have talked.
Sadness and disappointment on this side of the table as opposed to that side of the table, Matt.
True, man. I don't know why teams don't win more often. This is fun, man.
I love this winning
thing. We should try this shit.
I got to get into the playoffs before that happens, Matt.
Take us anywhere else you want to go, man. What series has had your attention? What have you enjoyed? What surprised you? We will remind the good listener once more that we're doing this Sunday afternoon, so there's some action tonight that may change some things, but based on where we're sitting right now.
The series I wanted to watch, I was so stoked about the Toronto-Tampa, and it actually was underwhelming in many ways, but we'll leave that.
Yeah.
I really wanted to watch the Rangers Devils.
Same.
And
schedule sucked there.
And the Kings Oilers.
Yep.
So those were the three series. I got sucked in hard into the Carolina-Seattle series, which
wait, Colorado, Seattle, or Carolina, New York?
No, sorry, Colorado, Seattle.
Okay, yeah.
No, the Carolina Islanders.
Borderline unwatchable.
100%. Short of Aho getting hit in the face.
Yeah. By Aho.
Yeah. Aho on Aho violence.
You hate to see it, man.
Yeah. But somewhere
cross-border family dinner is going to be.
Snoop Dogg is saying, it's like two of my uncles fighting in the backyard. That was terrible. And I think we all knew it was going to be terrible.
Well, especially, Teravainen goes out and Svechnikov is already out and Pacioretty was all. You're like, oh, so we're just going to grind this.
And Lou Lamoriello's involved on the other side of it.
Exactly.
And you're like, this seems like shit.
Especially, I don't like the Islanders. So that goal that eliminated the Stastny goal in overtime.
Yeah.
Putrid. Right?
Yeah.
And Sorokin, maybe in a non-Linus Allmark world, is the Vezina Trophy winner this year. Like, he was fantastic. But to see that go in, you're just like, that's gross, but sweet.
Well, and even his stats, his playoff stats for a guy who's going home.
Yeah. Elite.
Pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that guy, again, should get the Sasha Barkov most underrated guy.
True. Colorado, Seattle.
Just to me, in terms of just how fast that series is, and also how downgraded Colorado seems to be.
I think I saw that it was either 5 or 6 of Colorado's top 11 scorers from last year's playoffs are gone for one reason or another. Landeskog injured, Nichushkin personal reasons, Kadri gone, Burakovsky gone. Like,
actually playing in Seattle, I believe.
Yeah, he's not gone. He's around. Yeah, he's just not where you want him to be.
He's actually in the arena. He's just over there.
Right.
Wearing those sweet jerseys.
It's that team has had a couple chunks bitten out of it, right? And McKinnon doing what he can, and Rantanen had, again, like a quiet 50-goal year out there. But they're just not the same team that they were last year.
No, and it is that sort of idea of as soon as you win, right? And what I think
start
of
taking pieces
Chicago
off. Yep. and Chicago's the biggest example.
Yeah, but Tampa even, right?
Yep.
How it's just been continually downgraded, right? In terms of
their entire third line, Tampa, gone, right? Like Yanni Gourde and
Coleman
and Gaudreau, like just all of them.
Yeah, and so Nick Paul clearly does not do it all. so it's just one of those things.
Yep.
But the way the Kraken, and I didn't watch a pile of Kraken, to be honest with you. When they were in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, you sort of got a good eyeball on them. But I'm not staying up to watch Vancouver, Seattle.
No.
Or Calgary, Seattle, to be honest with you. There's just not a lot happening out there in the late game. As much as I like Harden Ryan saying, it's just it's not enough. Like, it's the Louis DeBrusque factor is actually pushing me in the other direction.
True, man. Yeah.
But the 5-on-5 play, and you watch how good they were for most of the regular season, 5-on-5.
There's waves of 15 to 20 goal guys, right, that are all capable of doing something.
No first liners, but a team entirely consisting of sort of middle six guys.
Yeah, Daniel Sprong on the fourth line. Remember me, fuckers?
And we're just going to roll, right? We're just going to roll and roll and roll and roll. And even though we have terrible goaltending, we're just going to wear you down.
Vince Dunn, so fuck you.
Honestly, when they were in Ottawa, they had the Vince Dunn box. And I don't know if he had 18 points in that game. But there were people wearing like Vince Dunn.
Coming into that game, not in that game. He didn't put up 18 points in that game.
Oh, yes, he did.
Okay.
It certainly seemed like we're giving 3 for a goal and 2 for an assist, but it seemed like that guy was...
All right.
He was killing
Local
it.
Guy, is he? I didn't know that.
No.
Oh.
He's not. And so whether he's from somewhere in the Toronto area...
Okay. So they just followed him across the
They came down, they had a box, and like I said, there was everybody wearing a Vince Dunn jersey from Pee Wee, right? There was just all kinds of St. Louis jersey, like just shit.
Yeah.
And he just stepped on the accelerator and crushed the Senators that night. But 5-on-5, those guys just come and they're fast.
Yeah.
Right? And so that to me has been the series that I was not looking for.
That end up on
absolutely jumped out and was and is. Again, everybody will know the outcome of that as well. But it is that's the sort of the surprise series for me. The Dallas-Minnesota series.
I'm not sure I watched 3 minutes of it.
Okay, and the only thing I want to bring up in that is the season Gustafsson had out in Minnesota.
Philip Gustafsson there, former Senators prospect.
Yep, Gus the Bus.
Right.
Why the season he had, the opening series win, and then you come back with Fleury in game 2.
That's what they'd done all year.
That's stupid.
Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah, okay. To me, you go, in this day and age, the demands on a goalie don't allow you to do a sort of 70-12 or a 65-7, whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't, you need 2 goalies now.
Yeah.
But you have 2 goalies so you can roll it fresh in the playoffs. To me, this is not a time when you go, oh, well.
Keep rotating.
How much have you seen Swayman? Although we may see Swayman
see him tonight.
I have no idea. But I'm just saying.
What a time for Linus Ullmark to remember he's Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, but that was a guy, if you remember, when he came over, he was over 500 in Buffalo on a really shit Buffalo team.
Yeah.
So when he signed, he went, that's a lot of money for
that guy.
But then you go, okay, but he was like 42 and 40 in Buffalo. And you're like, that's a pretty shitty team. And to have a goalie who's 500?
Especially when he played 82 games by your math. It's a good year.
Yeah, no, that was his career in Buffalo, not a year.
42 and 40 last year. They worked that fucker.
Yeah,
those are Glenn Hall numbers.
And his Buffalo career numbers were, I believe, 42 and 40. Okay. Like he was above 500. Yeah, sorry, it wasn't one single season.
We sort of touched on it there with how disappointing and disgusting it was. Vegas and Winnipeg was interesting to me.
Laurent Brossoit.
Larry Brossoit.
4 wins.
Yeah.
Coming back to, as they call him, LB.
Yeah.
In Winnipeg, right, where he was a 12-game player while they were wearing down Connor Hellebuck.
Mark Stone, kind of slow getting going in game 1. Jack Eichel, kind of slow getting going in game 1. And then all of a sudden, let's get after it, right? After getting pounded in game 1, they just rode that out. It didn't even look close.
I love Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just a
I thought you were going to elaborate a little.
Nope, it's a throwaway comment.
Okay.
I just love that guy.
Yeah, I'll throw it away.
I'm going to model my hairstyle after him.
Nice.
Good Nepean guy there.
Let's see that. Yeah.
Are those actual plugs?
Back in the East, yeah, well, I guess we should touch on Edmonton, LA. they had their moment, LA, in Game 4. They had a chance to really make this uncomfortable, and they just couldn't get it done.
That 3-zip that turned into a loss?
Yeah.
Bam!
You hate when that happens.
You're done.
Yeah, if they take that one, all of a sudden it's 3-1, and you have a couple shots at doing this, and maybe you can rattle the cages of some of the Oilers a little bit, but the Oilers battle back, win it in overtime. That was a night, I'd been up late a couple nights at that point, and was like, I'm going to bed early. I'm going to bed early. And then I'm kind of half watching the third as I'm falling to sleep, and then it gets interesting. Then it's going to overtime. You're like, fuck, right? Like, you're into it now, and you're invested. So I don't know that LA is as good as kind of Edmonton made them look at times. Adrian Kempe is a guy I always forget about. I think he had a 40-goal year this year.
He was up there in first-round scoring.
Yeah, like, he was really, really good. It never looked like McDavid fully got into first gear. Maybe that's the Philip Deneau factor, which we've seen a couple of times now in the playoffs.
We did talk about that. That was in the Lost podcast.
I think that was the Lost
podcast, where I said I'll be super interested to see how the Kopitar-Deneau factor. And through 4 games, it looked like
they had a wet blanket thrown on him.
And you throw Korpisalo in there in terms of what he was doing. And then you go, who is the best trade deadline acquisition? Is it Korpisalo? Is it Ekholm? Is it Ryan O'Reilly? Right? Like, just in terms of the guys who you go, man, impact. And you go, who is the best? And so I threw O'Reilly in there because it's certainly mentionable.
Yep.
But you can't go wrong with Ekholm and Korpisalo being the two sort of.
And I said a couple times, like, I'm not sure I believe in Korpisalo, but I'm the last guy who should say that based on what he did to us in the bubble with Columbus.
Yeah.
He was really good. But even in the later games when McDavid did get going a bit, it still didn't look like what he looked like in the regular season. And maybe he won't in the playoffs, right? It is a different game. But we don't know yet, I guess. Or no, they're playing Vegas.
Vegas. Yep, that's already set.
If he gets going, man, it won't shock me at all if they blow through Vegas pretty quick. Like, I'm interested in that series, but if he can get up to speed and kind of carve through that a little bit, they don't have a Philip Deneau, right? Like, he'll probably be facing William Karlsson. That would be the line I imagine.
They do not have the center depth.
Right. So he may get galloping again. And
yeah. So is that where you're putting it? Do you think?
I think Edmonton will beat Vegas.
No, I mean in terms of you think because if you look at Draisaitl, he had an awesome series.
Yep.
Right. So he was certainly not.
But so did Mark Stone. Right. Like, as you sort of check off. We got this guy.
Sorry, and I was just looking at the center for the Kings versus the center for the Oilers, right? In terms of how that looked. And do you think that McDavid suffered the brunt of the attention versus what Draisaitl was able to get loose on?
Yeah, it was interesting at times when they moved Draisaitl up, and I liked that on the road, right? Like, somebody to help McDavid a little bit, and you can overwhelm Philip Deneau if there's 2 of them, right? Like McDavid and Draisaitl.
Really, those 2 guys are that good, you think?
I do think they can beat Philip Deneau.
Yeah, that's a lot for Phil.
Right, but on the road, I liked it. At home, I don't like it as much. So I'll be curious to see how it plays out. But you're right, the center depth. If they put Draisaitl back on his own line, Jack Eichel is good, but he's not either one of those guys. William Karlsson is good. He's not either one of those guys. Up the middle, this shouldn't even be close, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, right? It'll be an interesting series to watch what happens with Vegas and Edmonton.
Yeah.
Nugent Hopkins, not as dominant as the regular season, right? And so
didn't they have like 400 or 500 point guys?
Yeah,
something stupid like that. And he was one of them.
He was one of them.
Hyman, I think, had a crazy year again.
Yeah, but in terms of the number of power play points that Nugent Hopkins was able to generate.
They all got fat on that.
Yeah.
That's crazy good power
34% or whatever it was.
Fucking ridiculous. And it went up in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, and to me they're that good. Bouchard, I think, is up in he's got 8 or 9 points through one round.
Yep.
So that will be an interesting series, right? And in terms of, you look at Skinner, looked kind of there was the talk, right? Do you go Campbell? Do you go Skinner? Right? There was that.
It wasn't a single moment when Campbell was in there where it looked like he should be in there. Like,
well, and
he looked nervous the entire time.
Yeah, and
I would have gone back to Skinner.
Our Western correspondent.
Okay.
We talked about this, and I said, "There's no way you bring Campbell home in front of the home crowd."
Right.
And you go, "Hey, guess what?
Get in there.
Get in there." And you're like, "No, thank you." Although really, it's a lose-lose when you go. You're going to go back to where you were originally. You know, you're going to go back to L.A. and we're going to put you there. So to me, it was never in doubt that you go back to Skinner, the guy who got you there, for sure.
Let's bring it east. Boston and Florida, like you good listener will know what's happened in Game 7, but this is closer, I think, than almost anybody thought it would be. I thought Boston in 5, right? The gentleman's sweep, right?
Yep.
But Matthew Tkachuk has...
Can I offer you a tissue?
has gone all world, as he kind of did all year. Like, I don't remember if we were on the air or not, but like in a non-Connor McDavid world, Matthew Tkachuk is in the conversation for the Hart this year, the year he had. And I remember talking to you in maybe November or December and thinking the triangle there of the Flames, Blue Jackets, and Panthers, it wasn't working out for any of them, right? That they had the big trade between the Flames and the Panthers, and neither of those teams were doing particularly well. And Gaudreau signs as a free agent in Columbus, and they were awful. And yet the Panthers, over the course of the second half, climb back in, and now they're giving...
But they were in the last week. Like, they were at 80 games, and it was up in the air whether they were going to make the playoffs.
Still them, Pittsburgh, New York.
And the Islanders,
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh, New York Islanders, and the Panthers were all sort of in that. And Christ, it may have been the last game before that was really solidified.
It was right down to the last week anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at double back to Florida rolls through Ottawa, Ottawa spanks Florida, and then they go down to Toronto, Florida, and Keith Tkachuk goes on
Toronto radio,
and he said, "Yeah, Florida is soft. They're getting what they deserve. They're not hard. They're easy
Matthew
to
Tkachuk's father.
Yes,
yeah."
They're easy to play against. And so to me, I firmly believed at the time.
Thanks, Dad.
That's what Matthew wants to say, but doesn't say it because that's his team.
Interesting.
But he can tell his dad. His dad can go on the radio and go, yeah, the team blows.
Call
They're
Toronto
soft.
and say something big.
Well, but Florida was in Toronto.
Yeah, I understand.
And so...
But if Florida was in Nashville...
And
he's probably not going on Nashville sports radio.
Correct. And I don't know what the exact, actually what the correlation is, but you look at their record to finish out the regular season. They beat Toronto, I believe, in overtime that night.
I think that's right.
And then they went on this crazy run. And so I'm not sure what the correlation is, but to me, it's Keith Tkachuk saying the things that likely Matthew wanted to say but can't say about his own teammates, to me is super invaluable. And just how, if you look at the playoffs alone, the percentage of points that Matthew Tkachuk has been involved in of the Florida points, it's got to be 60%, right? Just in terms of...
He's been all over it, man.
He's everywhere. He's trying to fight your goalie, and the goalie's trying to fight the goalie's trying to fight him.
Yeah.
Right? Now, that was the loops hold me back kind of thing, right? It was the... Hey, now that the refs got me, I'm pitching my shit, and I'm like, let's go. But he's everywhere, and that is awesome.
I don't think either one of us subscribe to the fact that Patrice Bergeron has been a problem, but it is interesting that this seems to have gone. They were doing better earlier in the series while he was injured, I guess, from a game in Montreal that he wanted to play in front of his dad. Might be one of those cases where you let down once the other guy comes back, right? Like everybody plays up a bit knowing our leader is out, our top guy is out, and once he comes back, you kind of take your foot off the gas going, well, he'll take care of it, right? I don't know if maybe that's selling Florida short. That third period in Game 6 was insane. There was a couple of lead changes there. And look, you and I are sitting here, as we've said multiple times on Sunday afternoon, I assume Boston will win tonight. But at this point, any Game 7 is a coin flip, right? And we'll see how this pans out. I want to ask you, strictly because it creates an opportunity for the listener to point and laugh at us. Would you go to Jeremy Swayman tonight? Because they were a team that through the regular season, Allmark played the majority, but Swayman played quite a bit. Would you go to him because Allmark has not looked good over the last couple games, or do you stick with Allmark in Game 7?
Well, and just for a little background, in Game 5, right, he throws that puck onto Achari. I believe it was Achari's.
No, Achari's a Leaf.
Verhaeghe?
Carter Verhaeghe.
Onto his stick.
Yeah.
Like, just instead of going the way you normally go, you reverse it, you go along. But no, he's like, I've scored a goal. Ask Jack Edwards.
He scores! Linus Ullmark!
Yeah, on his own net.
Oops.
Yeah. So he's got the secondary assist on that to Verhaeghe, to Tkachuk, and in, right? Yeah. And so there was lots of talk after that Game 5. You're like, well, is there going to be any residual effect of that bad play, right? Like it is a game-losing mind fart, right? Mm-hmm. And then you go, okay, we lost 6-5 for a guy who had for the longest time, who had a sub 2 goals against. And
I believe I read the other night that after Game 6, Allmark gave up 4 goals only 4 times this season, and he's done it 3 times in this series already.
Oh, they're going to say he gave up as many goals in this series as he did all season.
It could be, man. Like, you'd almost believe it.
Yeah, because he was so dominant.
Yeah.
And then he comes out, and allows 6.
Yeah.
And you're like, oof. But that being said, no way I go with Swayman, right? Despite all that, you look at it and you go, that guy is the hands down Vezina Trophy winner. Yeah. I ride with him. Ride and die, baby.
I think I would too. Like, I understand why it's a conversation. He has been that bad.
They have the great handshake and post-game celebration. Yeah, exactly. It's very low high fives, low fives.
So I understand. Nice. It's a close team, man. I understand the conversation. Not about the reach around. I don't get where that fits in.
You totally get it. Show a little love.
Anyway, Jeremy Swayman has not played in this series, and that doesn't have to be the deal breaker, but asking him in Game 7 to come in when your team is clearly reeling a little bit, there is a lot of experience in that room. I'm sure they'll be fine, but it's a lot to ask, and I do understand that Allmark has been that bad that we at least have to talk about it, but I'm with you. I would go with Allmark again tonight. He's been your guy through the entire series, and you just hope to hell he finds his game, right?
Well, and you should be. There was I think it's 43 points, the regular season difference between these two teams. Like historical, all time.
But we've seen it, right? Tampa, Columbus is back in 2019. Like, there seems to be something about these teams that run away with the President's Trophy that all of a sudden get into it and they're like, holy fuck. Boston shouldn't be one of them. Like, Boston has seen this enough times, but you never know, I guess.
Well, because you came into the playoffs, and if I said to you, Matt, where is the weakness on the Bruins? Where would you have said?
Probably the blue line. I don't love much past Lindholm and McAvoy.
I love the Orlov.
Actually, the Orlov addition was fantastic.
Yeah. So do
their biggest weakness has become their biggest strength.
That's why there's 2 people on this podcast, Matt. See, and I had no weakness for them, right? In terms of you are the record-setting, or on pace at that point, at the trade deadline, and you bring in Bertuzzi and you bring in Orlov.
Yep.
I'm just, to a team that already...
We talked about it at the time. Like, Tyler Bertuzzi is a Bruins guy. Like, fuck.
He's a weasel. He's greasy, that guy.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, no. And I just look at him, like the mullet he's got going for him, and you're like... Greasy, and hadn't done a pile, but he's got it in him.
Well, he did, that fucking spin in Game 6 just ripped it right up under the bar. They weren't even sure it went in the net. He fucking
And so to me,
fucking guy.
To me, in terms of a team who was already rolling, not a lot of weakness there, right? So it just how this whole thing, and the fact that it's going 7 at all for a team that scuffled and just barely made it in. That guy has Radko Gudas, has Mark Stahl in his top pair. A guy who the other team was like, yeah, get lost.
Yeah.
Beat it. And now he's on your top pairing.
Yeah, it's true, man.
So you're
He
like,
fears nothing but a rainbow jersey.
yeah.
That's about it.
Okay. And honestly, I can't look at those two guys and think of the same.
Honestly, just also the same guys got arrested naked for celebrating one of their bachelor parties. I can't remember. Stuck on the side of the road naked.
Somewhere up by Thunder Bay, but it can't be the first.
Fuck, man. Brave to be out in Thunder Bay naked. Like that can't be your best showing, right? It's cold up there, man.
All year round.
All year round. Fuck. Or maybe that's just them. Why don't we move on to Toronto, Tampa Bay? You may have heard, got wrapped up. Game 6. Toronto in 6 is what one very shrewd observer predicted before the...
Not on air, but I said Toronto in 5.
Okay. Fucking loser.
Yep. Idiot!
Look, I've talked about this all the way through, so the good listener knows most of my thoughts. What were your takeaways as you were watching this?
I think in the Lost podcast, I think I said to you on the show, Toronto in 5, and you were like, easy, buddy, easy. And we broke it all down, right? In terms of, and I heard the intro. Oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was the intro to this show.
What I was in the room for.
Because as I said to you, you know what? I don't want to hear too much of your buds and bros and boogers and breasts when there's too much happiness, too much Leaf joy.
I'm into at least 50% of that show. I'll let the good listener decide.
It's just too much. It's too much. I can't it's Leaf fan happiness.
You're projecting a little bit, man. Those shows don't sound that different from win to loss.
No, okay, so all right, you brought it up.
Yeah.
I only listened to the one.
Okay.
And I listened to 10 minutes of it.
A throw.
And it was after the Game 5 Leaf loss.
Yeah.
And it was you. And you handled about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Listen, man, nobody fucking wants to hear your reasoned, thoughtful,
You were
pragmatic
tuning in from your
takes.
meltdown.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, nobody wants that, man.
You're
People
right.
at that point are tuning in
No, you're
for
right.
Sky is Falling podcast.
No, you're right. There is a demand for Matt to
be sad. I'm going to make money off of my own fucking self-loathing.
morosity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This morose motherfucker. You know that sells.
I do know that. I'm surprised. The listenership was pretty good when I woke up on Sunday for people hearing me be happy. That's not usually what they come here for.
Well,
so.
I'm not in that number.
No. Fuck him.
But the clip you played at the beginning, which was
Me and Maddie last night.
talking about outplayed.
Do
And
me a
you
favor, Matty. Just as I cut you off here for a second.
Yeah.
Do me a favor.
Cut me off. Yeah.
Just for a second. Ask me straight up if I care that Toronto might have been outplayed in this series. Please just ask me the question.
Oh, hey, Matt. Are you worried that the Leafs were outplayed?
I don't give a fuck, Matty. I could not possibly care less right now, Matty. I don't care.
There might be some indication that we won instead of lost.
that Sinbad laugh he's got going there, Matty, is it's nice to see that he's got the first round Coke nose going back for him there.
Okay.
But I figure it's a couple beverages in a late night.
Yeah.
And who's to say? Sorry, Matty.
He's not sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the day, I sent you after it was 3-1 Leafs, I believe, and I said, they were full value. And you said, I don't know what full value.
Right.
And all I meant by that was, at the end of the day,
Just win, baby.
it's W's, man, and that's it. And
Because
you go,
we've seen enough of these go the other way. Where
for sure you
Leafs
have.
dominated
Columbus,
and come out with nothing.
Montreal,
That
right? Like those
one
things.
overtime against Montreal, 10 shots to 1, and the 1 goes in.
Yeah.
You're like, holy fuck.
Although, don't tell Joe Bowen that.
No.
That's, what? It's going the other way. No, it's a goal. All right. Sorry.
Well, last night in his other big call, as John Tavares wins it in overtime, he's go, Mo. He thinks it's Morgan Riley who scored.
Mo Tavares.
You're like, oh, Joe, this was a big one, and you kind of whiffed on it, buddy.
Yeah. And so it does, and that's all I meant by it is it's wins. At the end of the day, it's wins, and the scoring, you're to tie it up with 30 seconds to go, winning in OT, the coming back from 4-1 down in like 13 minutes left in the third.
Yep.
You win that game, and you're like, This is different. This is different as somebody who's watching that team. They were the better team all regular season. They were the better team rolling into the playoffs.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if, to me, as a air quotes unbiased viewer.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, no. That's why it's air quotes.
Yeah, for sure,
there's air
man.
quotes there. It is, watching that is, yeah, I just didn't feel that special fairy dust on the Lightning, right? You just, Kucherov, Point, Hedman, Stamkos, it didn't have. Those guys could do as much as they can, but.
Well, let me ask you, because at the beginning of Game 6, it didn't feel like this was going to be Toronto's night. They didn't come out. Now, there's that old hockey trope, survive the first 10 minutes of the desperate team, right, when you're the road team. It didn't come out to me, or they didn't come out looking like they had the urgency needed to close this out. It looked like a lot of Game 6s or 7s when they had a chance to close. And they do come out of the first, having had 2 power plays, but still being outshot, but tied. You're like, it is Tampa that's about, that has their backs to the wall. If they lose, they're eliminated. We spent the entire week talking about, Toronto doesn't want to go 7. The pressure is on Toronto. Like, imagine Tampa's the one, like in any other series, you'd be like, the pressure's clearly on fucking Tampa here, right? But not in Toronto because, and they'd earned that rep, right? To worry that they might choke. But.
You look at and I love the post-series handshakes.
Right. We got respect in those.
All that stuff. And you're like, Tampa just looked like a team that was, there was nobody looked crushed in that handshake line.
Long summer.
Yeah, you're like, finally.
Couple cup rings.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, we're going. We're going to get rest. We're going to do whatever else, and we'll rebound. Yeah. To me, and this is not a snub to the Leafs. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, they look like a team that
had done it 3 times,
worn out, beaten, and outmatched. Yep. And I don't care if we talked about the big 4 and the goaltending was going to be the difference anyways. Whatever happened. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, Vasilevsky was good in Game 5, good in Game 6, but he was not good anywhere else.
Nope.
And Samsonov
was good enough.
Bent a lot of times, never broke.
Right.
Game 1, but he was put in a bad spot.
Yeah, that was not just him.
Right. And so to me, that whole bunting magic in that moment, right, was bad for the Leafs and bad all the way around, right? Just it couldn't happen at a worse time than when it happened. And so Samsonov was better than Vasilevsky, right? And for the most part, and it came down to a 2-1 overtime win. And that's not a fluke. That's not a fluke, and you have to do that. And so for a guy who was 1-7, I believe, coming into this series, and having to go head-to-head with who
countryman,
who has been the best goalie in the world of the past 3 years, and has the record to show for it, the closeout, the clutch moments, Vasilevsky's the guy, and he wasn't. He wasn't here, and the Leafs, so as much as that may be on Vasilevsky, the Leafs got to take some of that.
Well, and last year as well, when Tampa won, right? The Leafs, I'm not one of these people who subscribes to have the book on him, but they clearly make it hard on him, right? Like there's a lot of talent.
I disagree with you on the whole Derek Lalonde thing. I don't mind him.
You find him to not be a black hole of charisma.
See, to me, you and I talked off the air about Siddle on the Jays. Yeah. He's not a sizzler, right?
I find him way more.
But I'm saying the things he says to me, there's some interesting things that both Lalonde and Joe Siddle say. They don't deliver it in a way that's like, but there is some, to me, Derek Lalonde has brought some interesting stuff.
Terribly besmirching Joe Siddle here to even compare them.
Yeah. Well, no. And really all I'm comparing is the delivery.
Yeah.
Well, delivery.
That's what I'm commenting on. I think Siddle's delivery is
way
but that's
harken back to when Siddle first started on the broadcast in with Jamie Campbell, and you're like, oh my God, man, who is this guy? He looks like Ichabod Crane. What are we doing here?
I don't agree with you at all on this, but that's okay.
Yeah, all right. But to me, the whole goaltending, the whole shots from afar thing, the point shots, right?
I think there's something to it, but you don't build your game plan for let's take low percentage shots from the point all night, right? Like,
yeah. But so you as a guy, and I listened this far, right, who follow
Rob Gerson
on Twitter.
At at goalie_school.
Yeah.
Follow along, kids.
For those who don't, right, it was interesting listening to way Lalonde broke down the diamond and all these things on the penalty kill and stuff. There have been moments to me where he has been insightful, right? The fact that he is a newbie on a
he just has no personality. I'm not doubting that his information is good.
Okay, all right, and I think we can agree on that.
Sure. So, but I do think we talked about this last year. Toronto got to Vasilevsky until they didn't, right? He kind of shut it down in games 6 and 7, especially last year. This year, they didn't let it get quite that far. He was very good in game 6, but not tremendous. And there are people out there who follow the fancy stats stuff that say Toronto is a nightmare for goalie stats. Not necessarily, they don't shoot a ton, but they set it up and they set it up and they set it up. And when they do shoot, it's going to be a great opportunity. Not all the time, right? Toronto had a very difficult time in this series setting up any kind of in-zone pressure, right? Possession time was heavily in favor of Tampa. But your save percentage takes a beating if you're going to play 6 games in a row against Toronto because they're going to take fewer shots, but they're going to be good shots. Almost like the old Russian style, right? When you used to talk about Canada,
soccer style.
Canada used to rush in and take 1 million shots and play the percentages, and that's a totally valid system of play.
Yep.
Right. Russia, if they don't like it, they'd pass it back. If they don't like it, they'll
leave
circle
the zone
back, right? Pass it off, set it up again, bring it back in, and when they're ready, they'll take the shot that they want to take, right? And that's not exactly what Toronto does, but it's comparable enough.
That is the pro and the con of that Leaf lineup. When it's working, and when you have Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews, right? You have highly skilled guys.
Right.
And you go, that's awesome. We're going to control it. We're going to do it. But that goal, the game-winning overtime goal, that is playoff hockey right there.
Yeah.
I shoot it, hits a defenseman's skate, goes whatever.
Put it on the fucking net, right?
And it just, exactly, man. Yeah. And you go, whatever. The Chris Letang goal against Ottawa. Those things, you're like, that should never score, but it happens.
Yep.
Happens all the time.
Well, you and I talked at the beginning of the series, no matter, you can talk about Hall versus Liljegren. You can talk about Lafferty for Bunting, whatever. But
Joseph Holt.
At the end of the day, there was going to be a reckoning. It had to be the big 4. And the top 6 scorers in this series before any Tampa score was Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Riley, and O'Reilly. That's the way this had to get done for Toronto, right? This is always the way it was supposed to work. And all those guys. Now, Marner, he cooled a little later in the series, right? Like, that keeps happening to him. But all of them are a point a game at least or better in the playoffs. Matthews in particular was not going to be denied in this. Like, he's blocking shots. He's out there doing all kinds of things. I think it was, what was the number, 4 goals in his last 3 games or 5 in the last 4, whatever it was.
Well, it was 2 in game 5.
Yeah. So, like, the guys did step up. And Tavares, for all you said, which is correct about that goal, that's what he's supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was brought here to do that. Now, you'd like him to keep doing it a little later into the playoffs, but for now, let's take this one. And he was supposed to put them over the top. And in this series, when you and I talked via email before it started, that's sort of how I checked it off, right? It was Matthews Marner versus Point and Kucherov, Nylander versus Stamkos, and then they don't have someone to match Tavares. And they didn't.
Which is why, for as great a job as Sheldon Keefe has done, why they opened that first game loading up the top 2 lines, right?
I had major issues on a bunch of things that Keefe did in this series.
And so, to me, the way it started, and then it's like as soon as they went, all right, let's go with Matthews, Tavares, O'Reilly, you start to stack it up, which is when you go, everybody understands.
Yep.
Strength down the middle. And you go, if you put O'Reilly in that third spot, it makes for so much more of a difficult matchup.
Right.
And so, and you go, okay, 7-3 loss, and you go, let's flip it back the other way. And you go, 7-2 win. Wait.
If only it had stayed that easy.
I know, but it
was flipping a switch.
It's the thing that everybody said, people like you and I, who have never been coaches of the Pembroke Lumber Kings.
Someday,
right?
man.
Or Sioux Greyhounds.
Right.
Or Toronto Marlies.
Right.
who go, that's what I would do. I'm looking at this and
Sitting
going,
there on my couch covered in Cheetos dust.
yeah. Oh, I love the hard Cheetos, though, man. Come on, let's go. If I'm going with the soft,
It's the puff, man. You
no,
want the
then
Cheeto
you go
puff.
with the Humpty Dumpty, the soft. Come on. But yeah, that
Go
to
for
me
a
is,
Cheeto.
and so at the end of the day, I look at it and go, yeah, Toronto, despite being outshot, even last night, right?
Yep.
Saturday night,
Yeah.
they were outshot and in times outplayed, and it's. I'm standing watching the overtime,
Because you're as nervous as I am.
and I'm
God,
saying,
they might get through.
and
Fuck
when you
this.
see the pressure Tampa had early
Yep.
in overtime,
Yep.
and I'm like, this is the kind of thing that ends. And actually, I didn't say it out loud, but
This is how the story
the early pressure,
Yeah.
and then you come down, and there's a circulating, and the moving, and the rotating,
Yep.
and then that puck gets on net. That's the way those things happen,
Yeah.
right? When you allow, you don't capitalize on earlier opportunities, that shit happens. And so, yeah, Toronto was outplayed. How does that go, Matt?
Ask me straight up if I care that Toronto might have been outplayed in this series. Please just ask me the question.
Oh, hey, Matt. Are you worried that the Leafs were outplayed?
I don't give a fuck, Patty.
Yes. And that's it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? 6 games, who wins?
Right.
And so,
And this is the problem with the fancy stats club that I subscribe to. It has to pan out over a very long, very large sample size for it to make sense. You don't have that.
You
7
don't have
games.
that.
So just take the fucking wins and run, right?
well, the fancy stats are to be coupled with
Yeah.
traditional
eye
hockey
test.
knowledge
Yep.
and eye test. That's
Yep.
it. And so,
So let me ask you this before we wrap up.
are we wrapping up?
We're going to
Do
start.
you have any more beer? No. Okay.
It's really hard to make this argument knowing that, again, it's probably going to be Boston you're playing next. But do you buy anything at all into the theory that the weight is off their shoulders and now it's more likely that they could go on a run here knowing that that thing is done? Or is it just, these things don't translate from series to series?
They don't.
See, everyone knows Boston is the favorite, right? Assuming that's who you're going to play.
Yeah.
But could you play a little freer now, or is it just what Boston's another fucking?
Well, see, to me, Boston never as good as their regular season record shows. Like they aren't. That just isn't the case.
No.
And
But
they've
pretty
been
good.
punched. They've been punched in the face here in the first round. I put a Toronto Boston. That's a gimme series. That's a pick'em series.
Yeah, that's very different than
Sorry, I look at Toronto, Florida. That's a heavy Toronto
agreed.
series.
But so was Boston, Florida.
Yeah. But to me, there were injuries. You had at one point you had your top 2 centers out.
Yep.
Right. There was a bunch of things happening there. I don't think the Bruins are as good as their all-time record, but they're good.
Yeah.
They're good, and I would give the nod.
And they might live in the Leafs' head a little bit too.
I would give the nod to that, but to
Yeah.
me, I want to see that series.
Right.
That's the series. I will.
I'd settle for Toronto, Florida.
I will shut these mics off, or you will shut them off. I'll walk away from them. And I want to see the Bruins win tonight.
Right.
That's what's going to happen here. But that to me is a closer series than the records would indicate. But clearly, look at the Boston Florida series.
Yeah.
So to me,
And I think the season series was like 1-2-1 or something like that. Like Toronto played them tough
who?
for Boston. Toronto against Boston
2-1-1 for
that's
Boston.
Right. It was 2-1-1 for Boston. That's right. So,
I just wait and see if I was.
but even if it wasn't Boston, like just as a mental thing, do you think it means anything to finally have done it, or is it more likely that you're like,
Yeah,
fuck,
so-
that was our cup, we'll foot off the gas? I don't
Sorry,
know.
that was the question.
Yeah.
And in 8 years of doing this podcast, Rob has a long answer that actually has nothing to do with the question Matt asked. Yeah, it's,
Maybe guy to guy, it's
watching it last
different.
night, it was quite jubilant on the ice.
Yeah. They said the right things after the game, but now you know there's a mic in your face.
Hey, right away, Austin Matthews said it's step one
That's
of
the first step. Yeah.
It's step 1 of 3, I think he said.
Yeah.
And you're like, where?
How far you plan on going,
Yeah,
man?
there's 4 steps. I thought pretty sure there's 4 steps.
He's being realistic.
Yeah. With his pedo stash. It's. I don't think so. I really don't think so. I don't think they're satisfied. I don't get that impression. But
Who knows?
It could be, Matt.
Yep.
But I'm saying no. Okay. I'm saying no. I think this could be. This has the feel that it could be the thing that propels them forward.
Right.
Right.
Monkey off your back.
To me, it isn't, because the talent is there and the team is there, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it, and I don't think we saw all that the Leafs have to offer.
They can be better, yeah.
Their defensive structure, all those sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
Nice to see Gustafsson in.
Sure. For the 7 shifts he maybe had in the game.
Yeah, and again, who went out for him?
Hall.
Oh, Hall did go out.
Justin Hall, yeah.
Okay, Justin Hall.
Justin Hall. The black hole.
The black hole. Yeah, honestly. So at the end of the day, though, Matt, 2-1 versus whatever the score was in the previous game.
Yep.
When
he was on the ice for something ridiculous, like 14 of 20 goals against.
11 of 16
fuck
or something.
Me.
And yes, and again,
I get it. It's not all his fault. He's a penalty killer, all that stuff. But Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. Well, and somebody's saying, people are saying, that he is a Marlies Calder Cup winning guy.
Sure.
Like he's
one of Keefe's guys.
He is a Keefe's Dubas guy.
Yeah.
And so I lean more towards this being a propellant for the Leafs.
Right.
Than it is to be we won the cup moment.
Right.
I think the fan base may feel more like that than the players. I think, although Dubas,
he looked pretty fired up.
Man, his face was red. He was just like...
I was waiting for him to turn and scream at some more fans. That's what I was hoping to see.
We all want to see that, man. We all want to see that. But no, I would, personally, I would put the Leafs as odds-on favorites no matter who they play in the second round.
Really?
I would. If I was laying money down. Now, I hope the Leafs get crushed.
Yeah.
Quick
I know you
and
do.
fast. But I would put them as a favorite in the next round.
I think it would be tight with Boston. Like I'm with you that the gap between them isn't as big as it appears to be, but I would still have Boston as a favorite.
That's
maybe
just
not a
Matt
prohibitive
putting
favorite.
his safety blanket on.
Well,
and I get that. I get that. I do.
A lot of times.
Yep, exactly. This team has hurt me.
It's true.
But no, I think the Leafs have the ability and have the team, and to me, they've made the right moves.
Yeah.
They've made the right additions, and the goaltending is going to be what the goaltending is. And if
we haven't seen conference final Matt Murray yet, he loves to parachute in there and take you the rest of the way.
You get to game 3 of the Eastern Conference Final,
Right.
and Murray will kill it.
I think that's it, man. Covered a lot of ground today.
We did cover.
Let's
Jerry
make
Springer.
sure.
Jerry.
Let's make sure we hit save very carefully here.
That's all on you, man.
I know. You
As
want
it
to come around
always
here?
is.
You want to take care of that part of it?
No.
Good call. We'll wind this one down here. You're back in here next week as we try and get things a little bit back on track here.
You bet, Matt.
All right. We're on social media at Talk and Audio. Give us a follow there and make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're hearing us right now. For Rob, my name is Matt. We'll see you a little bit later on in the week.
See ya.
Fuck, man. Thank you, guys.
The hell is that?
Number one bullshit. Oh, number one bullshit.
Why are you so pissy?